All right, Layla Aman, the South Downtown Update.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Layla Aman, the Development Manager for the city. Today, I am here to provide you with an update on the South Downtown Improvement Project, as well as an update on the Coho Point at Kellogg Creek project. As many of you know, we kicked off construction of South Downtown on January 7th. We started the first phase of the project. So I'm going to break this up into two sections. I'll go through the South Downtown Improvement Project, and then I'll go into the Coho Point. Just to give a little bit of background for members of the community and our newest council member, the South Downtown project is a highly orchestrated project of the city between multiple departments. We pulled together essentially 7 different public works projects that were scheduled to happen over several years into one giant public works project that's happening in about 12 months. The reason for doing this is that it's more efficient and cost effective. So we were able to, it's kind of the adage of we're only going to tear up a street once. We'll do it multiple times over a year, but we'll limit the impacts on the community by limiting the number of street closures that we have and trying to really truncate it into a shorter time frame. It also allowed us to do a more comprehensive traffic control plan. So traffic control planning around multiple projects at once, allowing us to be more efficient in how we execute on some of these projects. And then it also gave us an opportunity to communicate more effectively with the public. And so I'll go into detail about some of these elements. And again, just as a little bit of background for folks, one of the things that really inspired this was the private development of Axletree. So the former Bernard's Garage site really initiated this discussion. Part of what they were required to do as a condition of their land use approval was start to underground utilities. We at the time had the lowering of Main Street underneath the bridge as being a critical path project. So bringing those two things together and then looking at everything in between gave us a real good opportunity to collaborate and to leverage the closures that would be happening as a result of those two projects to integrate others. As you also know, we're currently negotiating the Coho Point at Kellogg Creek project, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail at the end of the presentation. And we also had the Milwaukee High School redevelopment happening, as well as Northwest Housing Alternatives. So kind of 3 both public and private projects outside of the city's purview going on, but then our own. So we wanted to look at these as a whole and see how can we basically do all of this at once. Again, so a reminder of the projects that we are doing. So the lowering of the Main Street under the underpass of Union Pacific Railroad and the light rail. We're also doing a Washington and Main storm sewer replacement. The farmers market infrastructure will be providing utilities to both Axletree, the Coho Point project. We'll be undergrounding all of the utilities that are outside of Axletree's scope of work as well on Main Street and Washington. We'll be building the South Downtown Plaza, and then at the end we'll be rebuilding Main Street, Washington Street, which will include new sidewalks, a new street, and then also all of the water quality facilities. We've broken this down into what we're calling kind of 4 phases. We've broken them down geographically, and I'll do my best to sort of identify which projects we'll be doing within these phases, but it is really a bit of a dance. We meet weekly with our contractor and as we try to schedule this out. But to give you a sense of sort of how we're phasing that, first phase really is the Main Street underpass. That's what's kind of going on right now. And then phase 2 is happening concurrently, which is the installation of the stormwater and the water pipeline. We're doing a lot of that at work at night. So that was another thing that we were able to do, is a lot of the stuff that's impacting the right-of-way that requires closures, particularly on Washington, is happening at nighttime. Phase 3 will be closing Main Street north of the post office and Washington Street south. So we'll go down to 1 lane on Washington, and then we'll be closing the northern portion of Main Street. And then the final phase will be Washington Street north. Just another way of looking at it. So phase 1, we anticipate that phase 1 will be complete sometime in the spring of 2019. And then phase 2, again, as I mentioned, is happening concurrently with that. So night work that's happening, we expect that to be completed sometime in the summer, end of the summer. And then phase 3 will start again concurrently with the night work that we'll be doing on Washington and Main Street. And then phase 4 really happening kind of the last quarter of the year. which would be Washington Street North. So phases 1 and 2, again, it's really the underpass of Union Pacific Railroad and then Washington and Main storm pipe replacement. So just to give folks a visual, the area that's denoted in green is still open to two-way traffic. South of that is closed, both to pedestrians and to vehicles. That will flip once we move into phase 3. So we'll see a reopening of Main Street to the post office, and then a closure of Main Street north of that, and then the south side of Washington will be closed. We will then have eastbound traffic on Washington basically until the project is completed. It'll just switch sides depending on what phase that we're in.
Can I ask about the wastewater line? Is that going into some sort of treatment pond, or is that just going into the river?
So Jennifer Garbely would have been here tonight and can be more specific about that, but are you talking about the storm water line?
Stormwater.
Yeah.
I didn't mean wastewater.
Yeah, I
meant
believe
stormwater. Yeah. Oh.
It is. I'm gonna get back to you on that question
Okay.
because I'm not absolutely sure, but
Okay.
I imagine it will be going into where it should be. How do you like that answer? And just to give you,
We will be putting it where it's supposed to
we're
go.
going to be putting it exactly where it needs to go. And just to give you a sense of the dance that I was talking about, a lot of the items that we'll be doing in phases 2, 3, and 4, actually really 2 and 3 we'll be doing the storm sewer pipe replacement, we'll be doing the farmers market infrastructure, providing the utilities, undergrounding of the overhead, the downtown plaza will probably be done sort of last toward the end of phase 3. And then again, the rebuilding of the streets will happen as I've described in the phasing, which is phase 4, just for your visual enjoyment there. So what we've done too, this is one of the big efforts that the team has led, and I do want to take a second to acknowledge the team. This has been, we meet weekly as well. So Jennifer Garbely is our assistant city engineer, and I head up a team of engineers. So Stephen McWilliams is the project engineers working on this with us as well. Jordan Imlaw from the city manager's office has been an extremely large part of this project as well. Linda Kugel from Public Works, who's our GIS person, has been working with us on this as well. And then Tempest Blanchard from my office has been assisting. So we meet weekly. We've been sending out updates to what we call our stakeholder list and our subscriber list. So we developed the South Downtown website. This was our biggest kind of endeavor in terms of advising the public. We did a branding campaign around this. The South Downtown website, just for those who aren't familiar, provides an overview of all of the projects. So if you get questions from the public, this is a great place to send them because it gives a real nice description of everything. We also describe the public improvement projects. So if someone's like, what is this stormwater project? They can go here and learn more about that. It also gives an overview of both the public and the private development projects, because I know I get a lot of questions about those, and so this is a nice place for folks to have. The intent behind this is there's so much happening. We wanted the public to feel really informed and aware of what's going on. This is also the main avenue that we use to provide project updates. So we have now that the city is under construction with our improvements, we're sending out weekly advisories on Thursdays, even if there's no change from the week before. That was some feedback that I got from members of the public saying, hey, even if it's nothing new from last week, just keep us posted. And so Jordan and Stephen and I work on those every week, and we send those out on Thursdays. This also has a live traffic map. So if you've been to the website, you can go and see where we're having closures. So members of the public can go there and see on the map where those closures are, where the pedestrian closures are. It's just a way for us to really have a lot of information out there in the public realm so that folks can have a landing spot for that.
Layla, do you have a
sure.
sense of whether or not this has been working?
I get pretty good feedback from the folks in the community. It helps me, frankly, when I'm talking to people who are out in the community. We have cards and other sort of swag that we give out. So I know for me personally, it's been helpful. I know folks I've talked to have given me feedback on things that we could add and change. So I feel like that's the case, but I would certainly be curious to know if you're hearing the same thing.
Are we measuring sort of engagement with the website?
Are we measuring engagement with the website? Do we have a sense for how many visits?
I don't know about how we can track that, but I can check. What I do know is that we have a subscriber list, and I don't know what the number is now, but I can find out.
But is it growing?
It is growing.
Good.
Yeah. And the more I talk to folks, that's helping. So this is just one of the ways that we're reaching out to folks. We did some marketing materials. We were trying to get more signage out there with the SoDo branding. We've been putting stuff into the pilot. I attend the historic Milwaukee NDA meetings every month. Stephen's been joining me on those the last couple of months, and will continue to through construction. Monthly attendance at the DMBA, so the Downtown Milwaukee Business Association. We've also been coordinating with both public and private partners. So we've worked with the DMBA, the Historic Milwaukee NDA, the Axle Tree construction team, as well as folks from the high school. And getting folks together to discuss issues and coordination, and that's been really helpful. It's been an avenue for our community members to provide input and feedback and raise their concerns, frankly. We've also been doing mailings and door hangers that are consistent with the city policy around construction. We've done door-to-door visits, so I know I've knocked on many doors. Before we commenced construction, both Stephen and Jen Backhouse went and knocked on every door that would be impacted. So we've really been trying to hit the pavement, literally, and then also try as many avenues as we can to get the information out. Nothing's perfect, but I think we've done a great job at that. We've also developed sort of what we call kind of customized traffic control. So we're working with Axle Tree actively, their development team, the high school, and just really trying to do our best to keep that area moving. We created a pedestrian detour map, so it's on the back of those SoDo cards we've been handing out, also on the website. And then we just finished a parking closure map because we've closed some parking. That was actually something the DMBA brought up, so we responded. We had to do a traffic reg change, and now we get the signage up, and then we'll start handing that map out. So we've been working really hard to get the word out. So the more ideas and more thoughts about that we can get input on is helpful. So that's that on.
Before you go on to Coho Point,
Yeah.
Do you have a timeline on Axle Tree and when we're going to get our sidewalks back?
Yeah, so we're actually coordinating directly with them, and we will be putting in the frontage improvements along Main and Washington Street. So that will happen probably as part of Phase 3 because it's the south side of Washington. So the strategy is we'll rebuild Main. Main may be closed for a little longer because that's their only access to do the remainder of the work they'll have on that building. But I'm anticipating sometime in the summer, late summer. They're anticipating opening, I think, late summer, early fall.
That's what their website still says fall. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, so they're still tracking. But so the idea would be is that we would reopen the south side of Washington, and then we flip to the north side. So once Washington's reopened on the south side, the sidewalk should be complete at that time. And so we're coordinating directly with them on that because.
So you're thinking late summer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I have a couple questions too.
Yeah.
The bulb out designs at Washington and Maine, are old bulb out designs, or are they what theoretically the council decided to change to 5 years ago to allow for larger trees to be planted at the corners of each of the intersections?
So I don't know specifically, but I do know they're based on our public area requirements. And I don't see Stephen here, but so they're designed to the standard. But I can follow up with you on that.
And then are we seeing a lot of backup at Washington and 21st?
That I also don't know. I've been down there a lot, and I haven't experienced it myself.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, it hasn't.
So-
I'm not there when school is coming and going. I'm sure it's worse then, but I go that way a lot, and it hasn't been bad.
I just walked through there on my way here from the train, and I mean, it seemed sort of a normal train crossing type situation, not really a backup. I wonder if, and maybe this is just sort of a seed for maybe future thought about, following in Portland's footsteps with trying to make as many sidewalks available as possible during construction, and sometimes that includes closing lanes of traffic. There's a project right near my office currently where, the street has simply given up a lane of traffic to make sure that pedestrians can still safely cross. And I think that, if that's an opportunity for us, then maybe something we might consider as a policy.
Well, I do see, especially, I'm less concerned even about the Washington Street than the 21st Street.
Right.
21st Street, those kids are walking in the side of the street all the time. They are not walking on the west side or the east side of 21st. And I think the sooner we can get that open, the better.
I agree with that. And it might be even, and it could be a negotiation with Axle Tree that maybe they've taken up more than they really need, because it looks to me like, because I use that part of the sidewalk all the time, that it looks like they're just sort of like storing some construction, like some tools and stuff there. It's not really it's not really being impacted by construction as much as Washington and Maine are.
Right.
And I would just add, as a frequent pedestrian on the corner of Maine and Washington, that I have had multiple instances of not being seen by cars. So I know you guys are doing a lot and doing a lot of signage and outreach already. If it comes up and there's a way for both the high school and for that intersection where you do have a lot of people who are getting either from the bus depot or from the MAX station, to just say, no, really look for pedestrians. That would.
Is it Maine and Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we slowed down vehicle traffic, I believe, to 15 miles an hour on Washington. But duly noted. The other thing is when we go down to one lane, hopefully that will help with any kind of pedestrian issues there. But yeah, it's a complicated area. I think certainly Assistant City Manager and I were talking about, as you go through this process, there are a lot of lessons learned. And so we're taking note of that and appreciate your feedback.
I have a really quick, before we leave it, are we thinking that Plaza will be finished? Did I see a September date potentially somewhere? Is that right?
Yeah, I anticipate, so we're going out for a competitive process right now to get a CMGC for that project. So it will be done likely as part of the end of Phase 3, early part of Phase 4. So I anticipate that being kind of one of the last elements that we'll put in. We need to get all the utilities, all the underground stuff done first, and so that will be done last.
That would be the hope.
Yeah.
Is September. And have we talked to CMI about potentially doing the special Thanksgiving there?
That is a hope and dream, yes. Yeah, and the market, I should note that we've been in contact with them, and we'll be opening the market down there in May of 2020.
Be fun to have it in Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That would be a difficult thing to do, frankly.
Because I'm not going to jinx myself. So.
Yeah, that marking, anyway. I could see some reticence for that.
And I would just say, I think you guys have done a great job, as far as I can tell, on doing outreach. And so the question I asked was not about is it enough, but more, I know it's taken a lot of staff time and coordination to do the amount of outreach you've done. And so I guess I would like a sense going forward, is this the way to do it if we have another big, complicated project that's really impacting a part of the city? Like the SAFE projects are another one where we may have major impacts. How much time is it realistic to expect staff to provide in terms of doing outreach and the coordinated effort and the branding and all of that? So that's really what I was sort of inquiring about. So anything we can do to track that without becoming burdensome, I think would probably be helpful to know.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I think for a project of this size and impact, and being kind of one of the first ones in our downtown, there was a lot of gearing up that I think could be leveraged for other elements. We learned a lot on this process, so I think there's a lot that can be taken from that and translated. Maybe other things that we wouldn't do, just depending on the scale of the project. But thank you for the feedback.
Cool.
Onward.
Onward.
Okay, cool. So Coho Point, I know it's felt quiet, but there's been a lot happening behind the scenes on this project. Been working with the development team. So just to remind folks again, we did a competitive solicitation process about 1.5 years ago, actually almost 2 years ago, and selected BlackRock LLC to be the developer on this project. And since we last met, when council approved the exclusive negotiating terms for that agreement, which was January of last year, the developer and the city have been working on sort of the due diligence on the site. So we've been conducting wetland delineation, working towards some other additional studies we have to do on the site, geotechnical analysis. And so we kicked off schematic design in January. The real big update here is just to give you a sense of the site, also to remind folks of where it is. It's in the heart of South Downtown, so just to the west of the Axle Tree development on Main, Washington, and McLaughlin. We're still working through some issues related to access and then kind of feasibility in terms of what the site carrying capacity is, frankly, there. So we feel confident enough that the developer kicked off the schematic design process, which is why we are having our open house in 2 weeks from tomorrow. So on March 6th, from 6 to 8 at the Masonic Lodge, just across the street from here, we will be hosting an open house. The development team will be there, as well as the architecture team, and we'll be soliciting feedback from the community on the ground floor design, looking at things, getting input on the desired commercial uses, building character, and sustainability features for the project. The information that we get from this meeting will help to refine our schematic design for the site. Just to give folks an overview too of what the kind of immediate next steps are, is we actually are going to meet with DLC and do a courtesy review. The Design Landmarks Committee will be getting similar information to what we're taking out to the public. We may have a little bit more detailed technical information we'll be inquiring with them about, but this was something that I recommended to the design team as an early starting point. As far as getting land use approval for a downtown project, we have to go through DLC, and we thought that this would be also a good way to maintain transparency and openness with the public by getting early feedback from DLC at this stage. Typically, you wouldn't go this early, but I felt strongly that this is a public project or public land that will translate into a private project, that it was important to get that input early. I would say get it early and often. So we'll be doing that work with them on the 4th. We'll be meeting with the community on the 6th. We'll have we'll be asking, we narrowed it down today to about 7 or 8 key questions oriented around sort of the building design, the massing, things like that. That will then influence the schematic design set, and then we will bring that to council on April 2nd. So we'll have a refined version of the design that we'll bring to you. We will also have, between March 6th and April 2nd, we'll have the questions that we're asking at the open house will be available online as well. So folks who can't attend, I felt that was important that we expand that out to get feedback from the community as well. So what we hope to bring to you on the 2nd will be a richly informed schematic design that does reflect as best we can the input and feedback that we get from the community.
So the March 6th meeting is a classic open house where people can just come at their pace. There's not a speaker or an actual presentation?
That's a great question. So we just discussed the format today, and we will be giving an overview of that. So there will be a presentation, and we'll have a series of 4 boards oriented around those 4 concepts there. And the reason for that is so that folks that miss it, we'll make sure online we have some sort of description, but a lot of the things that we're asking about are design oriented, and we can't expect all of the members of the public, although I have to say that most members of the public and those that attend these events really do have a high sort of understanding of these issues, that to sort of get to be as equitable as possible, that we do want to provide that design guidance up front. So there will be, I'll kind of introduce the project. We'll have Dr. Fareed Balouri, who's the developer, do an introduction as well, and then we'll have our architect on the team do an overview and kind of outline what the 4 sort of major components that we're asking for feedback on, just to give the public some context. And then folks will have about an hour and a half, and we'll have each board staffed so that folks can ask questions at that at that time as well. So tell all your friends. We'd really like to get a good turnout at that.
Is that presentation going to be videotaped by any chance?
We hadn't planned to videotape it, but I
Okay.
will inquire about that.
I can't be there, so it's a totally selfish request.
Understood.
I've seen a lot of people just on Facebook who are interested. I think you'll have a good turnout.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Do hope so.
No doubt.
Well, that's what makes it the best. Any other questions? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
work.
Especially just keeping them all straight.
All right, safe access for everyone, a program update, and this will be done by our Assistant City Manager, Kelly Brooks. Do you know where it is?
Hello, everyone. So I did not bring JLA or the traffic engineer with me, so if you all ask me a bunch of really hard questions, I'm going to make them come for the next one if I can't answer them all. But the goal of these updates, we were trying to get at every other month-ish, just to check in and let you know the latest on the projects that are active. So first, I would start with not reading to you, but kind of going over what was in the staff report, which was really just an accounting of the engagement. Just a reminder, we have hired JLA, public engagement firm, to help us with the engagement. That's proved to be a smart choice because we have needed to have quite a few conversations as we now have projects in active construction, which I'm going to go into some of the specifics around that in a minute. But lots of one-on-one conversations, lots of follow-up. So when we have someone call that's concerned about something, setting up that follow-up meeting right away. When the program had originally been designed by Chuck, he was really very focused on stay within the right of way, stay within the right of way, stay within the right of way. That doesn't always work. So as you'll see, there's some places where staying within the right of way leads to maybe too sharp of an angle on a driveway. And so we've had to create a right of entry kind of permit process that we work with, and JLA has been helping us with that as well. Have those conversations and get that permission. In terms of kind of the overarching, I'm not going to talk in here about Linwood and Monroe. We still receive inquiries on that project pretty regularly, and we're responding to those. We are still waiting on our weather window. I do have confirmation from the county that all the parts are here. We have everything we need to put the diverter in, but we are waiting for that dry and I think over 40-degree time frame where we can actually go out there and do it and have an agreement with the county in place about who's covering traffic control and who's doing what part. So the good news is I feel like the city and the county are still working really well together and that we're poised and ready to go. But that's where that is. But I am getting another round of inquiries now from folks, and so we'll be responding back out to those as well.
So
yeah.
I went through that intersection today, actually, and I think there were 2 people ahead of me and a couple people, I was going east and a couple people coming west. And out of 5, 6 cars, I was the only one that turned. Everyone was going straight through.
Okay.
So I do think we're going to have an impact on traffic flows, and I would love to be able to quantify that. Is there any chance? I mean, I know there were some traffic counts done back when we did the Monroe Greenway, but would it be possible to do a newer traffic count?
Yeah, we actually,
before and after?
Yeah, so we have, that's part of what we've committed to as well in terms of our work with the county, is we do have the traffic analysis in terms of what we expect to happen. But we put our contract out on the street on Friday for the design portion of the big project, so the full Linwood. And in that, I specifically have scope included for additional traffic analysis. So what we have now is a really amazing opportunity actually to go out and get, once this is installed, do the traffic count, see what's actually happening, and then that can inform our final design. So absolutely, that's my intention, is we have the pre-information, we have the projections of what we believe will happen in the routing based on the traffic analysis through Monroe, and then we'll also be gathering additional traffic analysis that we'll use to inform the design. So we'll do all that.
I think if we can show a significant drop, it'll help ameliorate concerns of some of the people on Monroe who are not a fan. I think when they see how it drops the traffic on their street, they might be more.
They might like it, yeah. I mean, I try to be just really, really transparent with folks and say, it's a diverter. I'm going to be diverting some people.
Yeah.
And we have an idea of where we think we're going to go. We think we know what the impacts are going to be. We think those traffic impacts are worth it for the safety improvement that we need to make here. And we're going to continue to look at it and see, because there may be follow-up things we need to do to address where the diversion flows to that we're not currently aware of. So that's...
Will we be signing the block out where you can actually turn left?
like directing people to divert. We don't have any proposed signage telling people where to turn right now to avoid. I mean, right now you would come to the end and need to make your right turn or not. And I would be a little worried about that. Because right now there are a few different places that people can go, and I think they're going to pick their own route that sort of diffuses the diversion traffic. Whereas if we signed them all to one particular route, what that might do to that street. So my answer right now is no. I'm not pre-diverting them. I'm letting them come to the end and then having to make that.
And what if they refuse to turn right and instead they
try
back up into somebody's driveway and turn around or do an illegal U-turn there, or...
That's going to happen for the first few, no
but
matter
at
what
least
you do.
if there's notification, they can't say, didn't know.
Well, I was going to say, maybe you don't designate a specific turn, but you start back by the new park or before where they still have 2 or 3 left turn. Because if you have to turn right, if you are wanting to turn left,
Then you have to turn right.
and you have to turn right, you have to go a long way. There's not another option to come back in, and so at least for the left turn people, I mean, for the people going straight, it's probably less of an issue, but for the left turn people, I don't know.
I will take it back to the team and ask the question, because I don't want to create additional safety issues. But we are planning to do a lot of advanced signage about the fact that this has changed, right? So as leading into it, there will be signs that say traffic change ahead, traffic change ahead, traffic. We want to get the word out that this is different.
But are we saying traffic change ahead, Monroe
street.
is no longer a through street?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact verbiage of the signage, but the whole intent of the pre-signage is to say that you won't be able to go through on Monroe. It's not through anymore. But that is all designed around educating people about the actual installation. So those signage would eventually go away, right? We would be telling you that it's changed, getting you used to the change, and then pulling that back. That's the way I see that signage working now. Yeah. But I'll take your question back and see if there's anything else we need to do to encourage safer operation, because I don't want people back. I don't want the problem you just described either.
Maybe even all the way back at 42nd,
Monroe is not a through street.
Monroe is
Linwood?
past, no
through traffic.
No through traffic past Linwood, so that they make that move over to King
Right then,
back
yeah.
there rather than wandering through I don't know.
I'll go ask the smart
I think a
people.
lot of people that go up towards the little shopping center up there, towards Safeway and that, they cut back. Either come through or go back through Monroe. So having something on 42nd would seem feasible, if possible.
Okay. So it continues and it kind of cycles in and out. When people learn more, then it raises back up. But the neighborhood's been really great about forwarding those things to us and continuing to stay engaged on the project with us. So that's great. We have our website up. We actually, thanks to your suggestion and reminding us that we should go out and get pre-photos. So Hamid and Jordan and Jessica from JLA are all going to do a big road trip on Monday. We've already gotten a lot of project pictures from Selwood and Ardenwold, but they'll be taking a picture of everything that's on that first phase route and just documenting it so that we have really good before pictures. They're also, I think JLA got thrown in a little faster on actual, we weren't slow in delivery, so they've been dealing with a lot of project-specific outreach, but their next on their list is to get an overarching kind of video up that just explains the program and why we're doing it, something that helps explain it better. So that's next up for them. So that's kind of the general I won't go into the details on all the outreach, just know that there's a lot of it that's been happening and a lot of it's been one-on-one right now. Okay, so just a reminder on, this is the solid project. The one thing that has changed and been designed as we've moved into actual construction is that segment that's on the left-hand side of 30th, that small segment, has actually been removed. We were dealing with some stormwater and some pooling issues at 30th and Selwood, and aren't at this time really fully able to fix those. There's a water line under there that actually needs to be repaired. And so we were very concerned that the vibrations of the truck and all the equipment we needed to actually put in that sidewalk was going to damage the water line. There were also quite a few large trees on that stretch that we were concerned about impacting. So Julian was pretty happy for us to kind of take that off the table for now. So that one small section, I just want to flag it, is different than what I showed you initially. So that's the rest of it is the same.
So was that filling a gap? Are there
That was
sidewalks?
replacing sidewalk because they're broken up due to the roots. So that was ADA, that was just accessibility. There's sidewalk there, but there were barriers within it because it was broken up, is my understanding. So what else do I want to tell you guys? I think that's all I want to tell you about this big one.
So what's finished already? Madison and?
Oh, I'm going to show you that next.
Okay.
I think. You'll see if I answer it sufficiently. My presentation's not as good as Layla's, everyone should know. Hers was better than mine. So where are we with the Selwood project? We are about 70% complete on the Madison and 30th components of that. What we need to do is, there's some segments where there's just a final patch of asphalt that will be done at the very end. And so if you go down the street and see little cones covering this little square patch, we got to go back in and fill those in, and that will happen at the end. We also need to plant trees and finish up our landscaping. So that's all that's left on Madison and 30th. Selwood is about 40% complete, and there are more issues with Selwood. So we've poured sidewalk on the bulk of one block, and we've demoed 2 blocks, and there's actually, it should say 5 blocks total. So there's 5 blocks total on Selwood. We've demoed 2 of them. We have 1 done. So that's where that 40% kind of estimate comes from. The rest of this, I'm actually just I'm going to show you some pictures of stuff I'm excited about because we're actually building stuff, which makes me happy. And then I'm going to just talk about some of the challenges. These challenges are ones that we told you about. They are now happening, right? Because we're building things. And they're going to keep coming up. And I think for us, it's just how do we continue to learn and get better at what we do so that we're using the lessons we pick up from this first project and the next project to make us better and smarter on the one after that, because we've got a lot of these to do. So I'm going to spend a little more time on those for this one. I hope for future updates, I'm not spending as much time on challenges because I've figured them all out, or we generally sort of know how we're mitigating them. So these are the kind of fun pictures. That sidewalk being poured right next to an elementary school, which I think is the whole point, right? So I like that one. And then that's also a retaining wall right at Milwaukee Elementary. So that's actually a really great example of a partnership where we have an easement to work with the school. We're building that on their property to make that walkway really connect and be ADA compliant. So I'm really excited that that's gone as well as it has, and we're continuing to work well together on that. This third picture is actually Madison and 30th. That's the first official safe ramp. First one. So if you thought there were a bunch of them before that, there weren't. Sorry. But yeah, so that's one. And there's also, I think I like it because there's a tree right there, and that tree is fine, right? So we're going around it. So I think it's just a good example of that things are moving ahead. And we've been going out and inspecting the work, and the team really feels like these guys are doing a good job.
So just to highlight what that meant, what you just said, is
What?
that construction, that ADA compliant curb and all of that infrastructure is now coming, it's no longer now coming out of the street surface maintenance program.
That's a safe funded
Money that
ramp.
could be spent on filling potholes, actually going to fill potholes.
Yeah, this is safe money. We're using the safe money to build this. And we have, as you know, integrated the program. So we're trying to get as much done across all the different programs as we can. But yes, that ramp is a safe ramp. Ramps, because there's more than one there. But so that's the fun, happy, yay part. But what's hard? Trees are hard. I'm going to show you some. Trees continue to be somewhat challenging as we move through. I mentioned before the grading at driveways. So the approach that we'd planned to take is just not the one that we can take. We designed those driveways assuming we were only going to work within our right of way, and that meant some of the driveways went like this. That people don't like that. So we've been working with them, and like we have this right of entry process to go back in and actually stand on their side of the line and be able to design something that comes at a more reasonable angle for them. So we've had a few of those where we need to go back in and redesign that. We have found that a lot of the water lines accessing the houses are quite shallow. Some of them are 2 inches beneath the ground.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So some of them have broken, and we fixed them as fast as we can. And so that has just been another thing where when we say we were nervous about vibrations causing a breakage on the other side of the street, we really meant we were nervous about that. And so, yes.
And is that an issue with the age of certain houses, or would the rules have changed at some point that made them be deeper? I mean,
That's a good question, and I know it's not what they're supposed to be. I haven't asked, and I will ask, is there something about when that line went in that made it okay, or was it never okay and it was just installed incorrectly?
Yeah.
I assumed the latter, but I'll ask.
I mean, it'll help inform how much we should expect it to recur,
Yeah.
I guess, if we know it was a certain
Yeah.
window of time or something, yeah.
So far, and let me know if you, yeah.
They weren't
Oh.
done correctly.
Would you come up to the?
Tried to keep you out.
It saves me having to answer it later. No, I don't know what the
Yeah.
standards were at the time they were built. Some of them are older homes. I'm guessing there were some other issues later on the street where things weren't necessarily built like they were supposed to be. One of the neighbors has been telling me that he did point stuff out. Things had gotten approved that shouldn't have been approved probably 40 years ago, and this may be a piece of that issue.
So is the main shallow, and that's why that?
No, the main is not shallow. It's from the water meters, which some of them, a lot of them actually are too high, and we're having to go back and lower these water meters. So that's been a couple problems. We've had 3 water meter breaks. One person lost her water service 4 times.
Wow.
In 3 days. So it's been an issue that we've been working through. But yeah, until you get in there and look at them, you don't know you assume everything was built correctly, and then you find out it wasn't. So that has been something we've been working through.
And Tessie, now that she's here, Tessie Prentice, associate engineer with us, has been the pointy end of the spear of SAFE. So she has had the first 2 SAFE projects to go out, and so is learning all of these things for us. And I've already told her she gets to do a lunch and learn for the rest of the team. But I think for us, what it does inform is that next set of outreach. So if we're coming down your street next time, we probably need to talk to you a little bit about the potential for water main disruption, or water disruption, because I think it will happen again. It's not, so, and how do we talk through that with people, and then what kind of response mechanisms do we want to have in place in advance, knowing that that could be an issue? So that's where Tessie's helping us identify those things. Thank you, Tessie.
No longer use a meter reader, right? It's all, or
We use a
are we
meter
still
reader.
using a meter reader?
Yeah, I believe sometimes they're electronic, where they can read it, but yeah, no, you still have meter readers. And
So they would probably have a pretty good idea of where they've got shallow meters and where they don't have shallow meters.
They probably do, yeah. One of them that we just discovered today is the water meter was actually apparently broken because the box was directly on top of it. So that's one where they have to go through. We've tried to identify all of those, but even when they go to pull the lid off, that we don't know until they're right there. I suspected it might be. So it's just a matter of working with the water crew now to go out and fix that. But it does hold up the construction, which is problematic when you've torn into somebody's driveway and they have a couple more days to wait before it can be finished, so.
Thank you, Tessie.
Yep.
Now you have to stay.
I know.
By the way,
I was on
I
my
told you
way
you
out.
didn't have to stay. I don't know you're here.
Yep, I was on my way out the door.
Now I have all the answers, by the way.
Save me from having to come back here.
Okay, so one of the other issues that we're dealing with is just limited space. So we have the right-of-way lines on the map, and then we have the actual practicality out in the field. And so there's some situations where we had a desire to design that we're having to modify just because the building that we're working around is really right up to the edge of sidewalk. So that's just an ongoing challenge. And then the other one is that I flagged it with example on 30th. But sometimes the fix that we need is really and truly outside the scope of the project that we've identified. And so working our way through, okay, we've identified an issue. We're touching parts of the city that haven't been touched in a long time. So if we've now identified a capital improvement need, a stormwater need that we need to do that hasn't been programmed, how are we going to come back if we're going to come back and kind of address that? And so we're trying to think that through as we move through the next CIP update. But that's always a challenge because when you see something, you want to fix it. But when that's 2 or 3 times the amount of the money you had budgeted, it's not really available to you at that time. And we are trying to keep our eyes on the prize and maintain these commitments. So that's just another issue I think that we're finding as we go. We are saving. We like saving trees. So here's a picture of some of the ones that are doing just fine. So the one on the left-hand side, that is, what kind of spruce? A Norway spruce. It is one, though, when we actually got out in the field, Tessie needed to alter the design because we'd originally thought that the sidewalk could kind of go between that utility pole and the tree. You can kind of see the root. You can't do that. You put it over the root, the tree's not going to be okay. So they had to modify the design to come out to the other side of that utility pole. So I'm just showing you those are some of the modifications that need to be made as we proceed. The next one, I think we weren't planning to actually construct that sidewalk. That is, we added it, but it was broken up. And so when we took the segment out of 30th, this segment got added, and we were able to take this out. It had the similar issues of barriers. There was broken up sidewalk due to tree roots and other things. So Tessie's, they got it out. And then while they were doing that, they just made sure to take steps to not impact that large tree on the right. So again, we just try to be flexible and opportunistic as we move along. There's plenty of problems to fix. If we're taking one area out due to a challenge, where can we make an improvement elsewhere within the same project footprint? And then at the right, you see that maple. That's one where there's, on the Japanese maple there, that's one where we actually built a small retaining wall to keep that tree safe before we put the sidewalk in. So those are just some of the examples of where we're doing what we can to preserve our tree canopy, but still get these things in. Here's ones that we were expecting not to remove, but it's looking like they're going to need to come out. So what are these, Tessie? Apple trees or something?
They're apple trees.
Okay. So there's 3. You can see one on the left-hand picture and then 2, I don't know if you can see them, they're on Selwood between 32nd and 33rd on the south side of the street. We are seeing root damage, I think, on the one on the left. We're seeing poor health of all 3, actually. There's suckers or something that tells us to get.
Yeah, the other one is they're directly under the power lines, so they've been massively pruned, and they're tending to sucker out from that, both from the root and water sprouts up at the top of the tree, which I had hoped to be able to save these. Unfortunately, the one on the left-hand side, there was some extensive root damage, and the middle one, we haven't actually touched it. It just naturally leans that way, so I'm not too sure whether it will become a problem later. And of the 3, none of them are really in particularly great health. I was trying to save them, but we're hoping to get an emergency removal of these trees tomorrow, just because I'm slightly concerned for the safety of the crew working on that and for future people walking on the sidewalk. And then what we will do is replace it with some of the Newport plums, which is it's a flowering plum that we were putting all the way along Selwood when we were planting. So I have talked to the homeowner about it, and he's in agreement that they really are not in great condition and have become problematic. It's a rental house. The person renting it actually climbs the tree to prune it rather than calling PGE, so I wasn't aware of that till recently, that is in of itself a safety issue, that they shouldn't be pruning under a power line. So hopefully these other trees are more appropriate for this location. So it should fix some of the issues that we didn't know were there and hopefully make for a better project.
So we try not to take them out. These are ones we thought we could keep, and they're not looking good right now. So I just wanted to be really transparent about that. And see if you guys have any other questions about these trees in particular. Okay, we will replant them so to replace the tree canopy. What else do we want to talk about? So Ardenwald. This is Ardenwald. We've got, this was actually a project that Beth, I don't know if you guys have met Beth, but she's one of our engineers, and she had an amazing baby and is out on maternity leave. So Tessie is now taking the reins on Ardenwald as well. We have the path, the walking path from Olson to Wake, and then we're building the sidewalk that's missing from Wake all the way up and over to Roswell. The good news here is construction started today. So now we're doing this one too. I don't know, Tessie, when are we supposed to be done?
I believe the end of March for this one, middle of March for the Sellwood, but it's soon. One of the things is that they have to wait for spring break to pour the pathway because the students use it to get to school. So they've scheduled it around when it shouldn't be used for school pedestrians.
So if you're keeping score, which I am, we've got two SAFE projects in active construction. One is going to be wrapping up soon. The other one started today. Will be done in another couple of months. We've got 3 design contracts that actually all advertised on Friday for Linwood, River, and 22nd. I think there's another one that I'm missing right now that was out. Oh no, the Plaza previous. Anyway, those all were out on Friday, so those designs of those larger projects can initiate and keep us on schedule as well. So I think SAFE is underway. It's underway, and like I said, our main job at this point is to keep everything on track while continuing to learn from ourselves about how to do it better. So when you're hearing things from people, please send them our way. If you're hearing concerns, I will tell you right now, you will, if you haven't yet. We have a property owner on the Sellwood route who has a retaining wall that's stacked rocks that's very worried about them falling over, really worried. And Tessie's spending a lot of time with that person and answering questions. But at the end of the day, it is pretty close, and there's not a lot of structure to it, and it could fall down. So I'm just telling you, if you haven't heard from someone who is touched by this, you will, and we will do our very best to make sure that we respond to them as quickly as we can. We don't always have an answer that everyone loves, but we try to give answers quickly.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head when Lake gets... because
Done.
of the construction and all the trucks running up and down it, the thing is horrific now. How far out is that?
It is on the schedule. It was supposed to be this summer. We don't know if the construction at the high school will be done in time, so it may end up being the next paving season.
So is that both the street and the SAFE projects on?
That would just be paving.
It is just paving. I don't believe there is a SAFE project located on that section of Lake Road.
Because there are sidewalks on Lake and...
On one side?
Yeah.
I think there are sidewalks.
There is sidewalks.
Yeah.
They are not wide sidewalks,
There's a
but
couple
they
of
were
blocks
not...
on one side that don't have sidewalks.
Okay, that was not identified as one of the first 3
Well, I mean,
phases.
Northwest Housing will be building sidewalks, right? And then I think that from there's sidewalks
All the way up
in front of the baseball
27th.
fields and all that, yeah.
Yeah, no, there should be sidewalks. Lake is just a SSMP project.
Okay.
And it is on the schedule, and it's just kind of dependent on when construction gets finished, when we'll be able to design and build that.
I thought Chuck had told us 2020 anyway.
I couldn't remember.
I'll find out.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's not. It probably is in the second. We may be designing it. The larger project, it may be on the design list. I'll find out.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Okay. What else do you want to know about SAFE?
super excited that it's happening.
Yeah,
Me
it's
too.
great.
I'm actually really excited.
Go engineering, go.
Yeah.
We go. We don't have an engineering director, but we go.
Actually,
I gotta
we're taking the opportunity to not having somebody that we're just running with it.
Well, it's working for you.
Turns
so-
out I'm real good at making decisions. Yeah. Yeah. So we gotta find another one of those. But yeah, the team's doing great and they're working really hard. And yeah, we're continuing to learn and get better as we go. So
Thank you very much.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In an effort to not be here as late as we normally would be tonight, we have about half an hour that we now have free. So we were wondering if you want to have the CCA dinner conversation, since Scott is the person who's presenting it, and we could actually start that now. Does that work?
Sure.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She was on TV, so.
So we are skipping ahead to a staff report that's in your regular session packet. We didn't prepare any slides for this. It's a pretty straightforward report. We heard from council at our last discussion, December, I think, of last year, that there is strong interest to secure a June date for a dinner, Clackamas City Association dinner, and for hosting it downtown Milwaukee. And so we are happy to report that we did secure the June 2019 and 2020 dates to host the Clackamas City's dinner in the city. And staff then took a look at what a downtown Milwaukee dinner would look like, and that really means two options that we narrowed it down to. Riverfront Park, Milwaukee Bay Park, and then the Masonic Lodge, which is the only other venue that we have available to us. Given that we just heard about all SoDo, all the construction, we may have some more coming online in the next couple of years, which is exciting, that we will control, and that we, may have event space and hopefully restaurants and things like that. But for this year, we honed in on the park and Milwaukee Masonic Lodge. And in the staff report, it really comes down, there's some logistical questions. It's sort of tied to also what the program is. So I'll jump to that real quick. We heard that there was an interest in showing off what Milwaukee has been doing, or showcasing the work that you've just actually heard the last hour about all the great things that are happening downtown Milwaukee. So we worked with our community development staff, Layla and Alma and Kelly, to put together a walking tour of downtown Milwaukee. And there's also a proposed map. That map is a first shot. We have a couple months to hone it, fine tune it. That's the general idea, though. As we were walking ourselves through this, we're starting to get our head spinning with so many ways we could go. And when you have a group of up to 60, 70 people, you want to be focused on your time, on their time, and you realize you're after dinner. So the tour time is kind of limited to that 7:30 to 8:30 hour. So we focused on South Downtown, the SoDo area, obviously highlighting on our way to the SoDo area from whichever direction, the park and the high school and everything else we're doing in the library as best you can. So the general concept around the program that we heard from council direction last time was sort of a community development-led tour of downtown, which in late June should be a perfect evening to be outside. And then we looked at venue, where do we host the open bar and the dinner. And so we looked at Masonic Lodge and the park, and staff reached out to some caterers and some logistical folks. We checked numbers with what neighbors have done. We've also, some of our staff just know from the event stuff they've done, know this, So these are ballpark figures, their actuals would come in, a little bit differently, but generally what we're looking at is doing something in the park, and considering all the things we'd have to rent and bring in would be about double what it would have to do at the Masonic Lodge this year. So there's that to consider. Also if we were to stick with the tour, that would mean crossing Highway 99E if we were to go to the park, because we couldn't offer parking in the park. We'd be taking up some of that space ourselves, and that's just limited anyway, so you'd have to go back and forth across. And that's not to say that even if we were at the Masonic Lodge, we wouldn't have them cross into the park if we wanted to put the tour that way, but you don't have to if you're sticking on this side. So we feel like we heard council's direction last time, and we've kind of put a couple of comparisons. We focused on downtown, our community development work, our projects in the downtown core, and kind of priced it out. Staff feels that we could easily do within what we've done before, more or less, with budgetarily what we could put together a pretty good show at Masonic Lodge. We could also do it at the park, but it would require a little more of a fiscal effort and the staffing effort to get that done. There's also concern that's been expressed to the city from the Oregon Marine Board that closing a park to the fishermen on a Thursday evening, but.
So that shouldn't be an issue. I mean, well, I wasn't necessarily thinking we close the park, but the fishing season is done. The fishing season is done by end of April. There might be a few random fishermen out there, but the salmon are done by end of April. The boaters that we would inconvenience would be pleasure craft boaters, and they too would be probably unhappy if we closed the park, but I don't know that, I definitely wasn't envisioning necessarily closing the park, yeah.
And sorry.
I was just going to say, in order to have the tents, we would do something similar to what we did for Solstice, and that takes up most of the parking for that space. So I think that was the basis more than anything else.
We didn't ask the Oregon Marine Board about this. We just know the staff has received input from when we've done things like this before, that regardless of the season, we get, don't close the park, Anyway, so the staff report kind of laid it all out there. It's kind of a double the cost. There's concerns about a tour route crossing 99E too many times. Other than that, we feel like we've got some fairly good blueprints in either direction, and now the staff recommendation at this point is to do it at Masonic Lodge this year with a walking tour of downtown, but it's council's event, so we laid that up there. We're happy to follow up on any other points that we may have missed. We certainly have time. We're talking about June. The good news is we can confirm we have June for the next 2 years. So whatever we do this year, we'll have opportunity to circle back, maybe literally, to them and hey, look at the buildings we have, so.
And I haven't asked Wilda, as I'm looking at her, Katie yet, but it would be really nice if we could also talk briefly about doing this at the library next year.
Yeah,
Because that would be ideal.
Yeah, the library or
I
even
couldn't hear what Ann said.
At the library the
2020.
second year.
Do the library
Yeah.
in
Oh, yeah,
2
yeah.
Junes, not this one, but do it in 2 Junes.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the library or even opening up the fire bay doors and extending out into the driveway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll have more options in 2020.
Yeah.
So is our goal, help me understand this, because I've got a thought running through my head. The goal is to show off like downtown and the Milwaukee Bay Park and all of that. I would not at all be in favor of that expense of having something down there for $7,000 where you could do it somewhere else. But the concern is also about taking tours and having people cross McLaughlin during that time, right?
That's correct. There is concern.
And need to park over here and walk over. So one of the very first, I think it was one of the very first city dinners that I attended was when Tualatin was showing off its new pathway. I think some of you guys were there. And they had that. Granted, it was right, behind REI and that, not REI, what's the name of that?
Cabela's.
Cabela's, thank you. Same kind of thing. Right behind Cabela's. But you just did it on your own, and then there was a place in there where they had, some hors d'oeuvres and alcohol and stuff. But then folks meandered back at their own pace, their own leisure, to Cabela's, where we had dinner at Cabela's, buffet kind of thing. So I'm thinking, with like this map, a walking map, and somebody like maybe the Historic Society that would position people at different places to tell them what's going on, or, Layla and her crew, whatever. There's maybe a combination of people that maybe we could say something like, from 6 to 7, take a walk at your leisure through SoDo and Milwaukee Bay Park and that, and then end up back at the Masonic Lodge. You can park at the parking lots here and then blah, 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 do it. I'm trying to think of a way that it's kind of a win-win for everything.
Well,
and then
so-
still could show a program at Masonic Lodge.
So I was wondering if we could do some sort of hybrid where we did the, without, as much infrastructure. And I was not thinking of putting it in the parking lot. I was thinking of putting it where the NCPRD put its tents last year. So not taking up parking,
On the
but
grass down there.
maybe having like cocktail hour there, where you didn't have to have tables, or you just had a few of those high tables. You had we have a bathroom, so we wouldn't have to get porta potties, and still did the dinner at the Masonic.
That's what they did in Tualatin. They had that little
The cocktail outside.
cocktail hour and some simple hors d'oeuvres or something, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was just cocktails.
No.
You could have popcorn. And
Yeah, I was
The
at
thing
that one.
is, in June, I know the past few years, we've had unusually dry, hot Junes, but the rule is it doesn't stop raining for real until the 5th of July. So
Actually, this is right around my birthday, and it almost never rains. It's usually done raining by then.
okay.
I mean, yeah.
Staff did bring up an issue, and he's not here, so I'll just mention it, that the sun going down at 6 p.m., if it is a sunny night, that is about the time when the sun blazing starts hitting people. So he was recommending that if you were going to do it, you have to provide some amount of shade against the water side.
Yeah.
So just as Jason.
I do think that's, I mean, and if it ends up being a 90-degree day, it would be miserable to be out there. So, I mean, I think we'd have to be flexible. But I kind of had this envisioned, let's have everybody park at the Coho site, which would mean making the construction guys condense up, but they have, they don't need to be spread out as they are. Have everybody park at the Coho site, have drinks on the waterfront, go to Masonic for dinner, and during dinner you could run some slides of the library if they're not going to be on the tour, of Hillside, of some of the other things going on in town that won't be if we don't walk around over to Northwest Housing and the high school of those, we could have some program while people eat as well as the walking tour. I mean, cities have done that before, and they've had, some have done a walking tour as an option before the cocktail
like
hour
Tualatin
too.
did that time.
You get there early and do that.
And I think that sounds rather reasonable, except for parking at Coho. I can visualize it better with parking across the street, because at the end of the evening, when they want to get back in their cars, I'm not.
Well, if it would depend on how you ordered things, but if you did this walking tour that's drawn here and you ended up at the food car pods, it would be much better for everybody to be parked at Coho. It would be more convenient for people than to be parked back down here, but.
My only piece on the parking is that I'm not sure what our agreement is right now with Coho, I think that's with Axle Tree, for use of that space, and it's going to be high construction season, so I don't know if they're planning on being at that site until 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. I just don't know. And Layla has gone home. I tried to catch her.
Well, that was why I asked her about their timeline for when we were going to retrieve our sidewalks and stuff. Because, I mean, it seems to me if they're really opening in the fall, that by the end of June, they're doing interiors. They're not doing exterior anymore, but, who knows? I mean, I really hate to miss the opportunity to do something. And maybe it's just the walking tour, but I have no quibble with walking the people across McLaughlin. Heaven knows we take thousands of people, including children, across McLaughlin. These are all, adults.
Right. Well, and, there was a tour that was just done that was led by the Historic Society through AARP, and over 150 people or whatever went, and they went across McLaughlin. And the one I led had, 75 or 80 people or whatever, and we went across McLaughlin. You have to kind of do it in a couple phases or go out there and say, stop, which they don't. So you do it in a couple phases.
No, I do want to just make sure I understand. So if we did the cocktail hour down there, we wouldn't have a bar in both locations. So there would be drinks for the reception, but there would not be
That's
drinks
true.
for the dinner.
And I mean, in my own mind, I'm just seeing, let's show that off and then come back, and then everything else is at some place like the Masonic Lodge or whatever,
It seems to me that this still sounds expensive to have cocktail hour in a different location,
Yeah.
because that means staff in
It
twice as many
does.
locations and some structure and
It's definitely
alcohol
more
permit.
complicated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we were doing it down at the park, we probably wouldn't be doing tents beyond what I have on hand. Like, I wouldn't recommend doing any sort of service down there for food, where you would need some sort of culinary kitchen. We wouldn't do any sort of, so, I mean, we could make it cheaper than this. It does complicate it. It's the same staff in both locations, plus you have staff probably out on site trying to help answer questions, depending on how we did the tour. So we're talking about a lot of staff time and a lot of people here at night, but we really are pretty open to what you guys want to do on this, and we just want it to work for you. We will have, I mean, the other alternative is we can consolidate it this year and then make it more next year. We could do actually both the library and City Hall. Those are easier to get between as the two sites, and they're both going to be completed construction at that time. So you could be showing off two things at once. So there, I mean, we're looking at, staff's looking at this as 2 years' worth of opportunity. Now we're trying to figure out which pieces need to go when to make it really sing, to give people an experience. So I would, as you're talking about this, I would just invite you to think about what is going to be done at what points, and what processes we want to show off this year, and what completions you want to show off next year, because that's kind of where we are in phasing.
Well, we can't show off the library in City Hall this year.
And And can someone tell me
I think
what?
that answers a big part of it.
But if you wanted to go over there and say, you know, we're looking at, we've done some unique footings for the tree. That's an interesting discussion if you want to talk about trying to build around a historic tree. We're looking at Harrison and trying to figure out different sidewalks on that site. So there are some things, if you want to talk about process with the library, where you could do that. If you want to show a cool new library, that's next year.
And this is historicity for me. I don't know what we would be showing off at Milwaukee Bay Park. It feels like it would be more, this is what we want to do in this
Exactly.
space.
That's what it is.
So
Yeah, and you don't
And
have
it's,
to
and
have-
it's having people who are influential, including the county commissioners who come and who
Sure.
have some money,
and the Metro Council.
stand down there and go, oh, yeah, this could
Yeah.
be,
Okay.
this could be a regional amenity. I mean, that's
Okay.
the pitch. It's
Yeah.
the regional amenity pitch.
Okay,
But-
that makes sense to me. I was just trying to think,
Yeah.
are we showing off the, I mean, it's a very nice
And it could
pedestrian
have
bridge, and
the-
I like those stairs down, but this doesn't feel like it's worth
It is a
crossing McLaughlin.
beautiful bridge.
I love the bridge. I appreciate it every time I go across it.
Yeah,
Maybe we could start, since there's already infrastructure there, have the cocktail hour at the food cart pod. And then take the walk, but do go out to Milwaukee Bay and take a longer walk and come back to.
yeah, isn't there somebody there who already serves
Beer and
beer?
wine.
Yeah, you
Beer
could,
and
if
wine.
you guys wanted
That's
to
all
do
you want.
it as a.
We can't buy it anyhow, we're not serving it, we're not having
Right.
anything to do with it, so.
No, and it would be a relatively easy way for us to, I mean, we wouldn't be in charge of anything. We would just have.
We'd just say, hey, it's
talk to the-
available.
Sorry.
Or you could go buy a soda.
Yeah, we should give them a heads up that people are coming.
Please be open.
Please be open, and please make sure people know they can't carry their drinks off-site. So there's a variety of things.
Change that rule.
Well, and we could buy from some of those vendors the whatever appetizers we want to do for the cocktail.
No, we can absolutely, that is an easier venue for us in that sense than going down to the park.
Oh, yeah.
also, though,
Because it's already there.
Yeah, it's also, it's a way for us to support that location, which is great. I would like to just tie it also, though, to what we're going to see, so that we make sure that staff understands kind of what you guys want to see through that process. But I think it's a great location.
Just keep in mind that if it takes,
Oh, yeah.
20 minutes for everybody to buy a beer or a glass of wine, and then another 20 minutes for them to drink it,
Right.
An hour.
you're already in the dinner hour and you haven't gone to the park.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we could start early, that part. Like, I mean, not everyone is going to want to do the walking tour. So
Not
we
everybody's going to want to go have a beer.
Right.
Either. I mean, so if you say, here's the timeframes,
could- Right.
we do this, and then we're at wherever, Masonic Lodge or wherever, for dinner and a program,
Sure.
something like that.
I think the mayor's right. I think you're probably going to end up with a really long line. We can talk to them and see whether or not they can have multiple salespeople out that night. And if they're willing to, it would be it's sort of like going to the beer store, right? It's a great venue night for them, so they may be willing to do that. But you're still in that corner, so you're going to be kind of tied.
It's kind of constricted, but that also gives people, while they're there, various ones of us could take people around the corner to see the high school and see the Northwest Housing if they're not officially going to be on our tour, at least while there's that milling time, we could be showing people that.
What topics do you guys want us to cover that night? Like, what are the discussion points for this? Just so that we're thinking through. I'm sure Sherry Grau would be supportive if we had people down there who wanted to see it. We have a story, right? We have the story about our property tax abatement on that site. I think Layla's story around SoDo and just SoDo and all the work, all those 9 projects and the shifting of that is definitely a government story about how to do this in an effective way. We won't we may have some stuff with Coho. We'll see where we are on the agreements for that, but that probably is a little less along. The library, it's kind of up to you as to whether or not you want to relive that experience. I don't know. I'm kidding.
No, I'm totally good with reliving that experience. I think we should.
Talking through the lawsuit.
I mean, I think.
Or not the lawsuit, the litigation.
It's relatable. I mean, everyone who's doing anything, is dealing with the, costs just exploding. And I think
Costs exploding in court.
And court, yeah. I mean,
I
just
think
the
about that,
process
right.
of going through that, everyone can relate to that, and, it'll be a very sympathetic.
Cathartic experience for me. No,
You'll
it'll be
have a
great.
sympathetic audience. Everyone will be able to understand that.
No, we're happy to. So those are that's part of this discussion. Layla, Alma, and I are all available that night for any of those topics. If you guys want to think about it some, just to make sure that we can create a system that works for that night in really about 2 hours. I just want to make sure that we're coming back and getting you guys what you want.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
7, 8, 9, and 10 on the map, why are K. Marie and Dark Horse offices and Painted Lady and Project Galaxy all called out on this walking map?
Well, that map, for one thing, is a little bit old. It still has
it is.
several things that are closed.
I'm just wondering what story staff was perhaps trying to tell, or if that's just an artifact of, this was a map that was convenient. Okay.
We were doing a walking tour. I think this was actually around the Orange Line opening, Line and what the effects were of the Orange Line.
Okay.
And so
Gotcha.
we wanted to show new businesses that come in and how they'd survived. And
It's a repurposed map.
Yeah.
We would tailor it to.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we could go follow it from, follow the trajectory from the food cart pod or over and down, and then to just continue going down Washington, cross into the park, and come back up on Monroe, I guess. And then, I think that could work. And I also think that, there will be downtime. There will be the time when people are eating once we're in the Masonic. And so then we could have, somebody could talk, or we could just have slides going or whatever, but of other projects, talking about Hillside, planning, talking about showing the library, showing the, slides or, schematics or whatever of the library, the things that people aren't going to be able to see.
If we can, I'd really like to try and get this to a couple of topics that we can create some sort of relationship story around, just to make sure that it flows throughout the night and that I don't have staff constantly changing as the speakers. We can bring in different people if Layla and Alma or I aren't the people that you want to have speak, but I just want to make sure that there's a story that I can explain why we're piecing these things together for the individuals who are there that night.
Yeah.
So I had another thought, and since I've never been to these dinners, I don't know what the culture is around them.
Educated.
Yes, that's what I figured. There's a lot of moving around. People don't move very well on a timeline. So I was thinking about, what if you did themed tables during dinner? And so you had, rather than a presentation that everyone in the room was seeing, someone would go to a table and I don't know, talk with Katie or talk with someone else if they were really interested in the library, and you could tell the story of the library there in a more detailed way than you do on the tour, and do that with 2 or 3, however number of stories we choose to tell.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely an option. It gets a little loud in the Masonic. I'm just letting you know that based on having staff trainings in there, that's part of why we went up to Harmony campus, is because the acoustics aren't great. But we could look at it. I could talk to Layla and see what her thoughts are. In general, which topics do you feel like you really want to make sure we hit? Like, what are the top 3 things?
I think SoDo.
Okay? And how those interact? Okay.
Yeah, and there's more projects in that area. I mean, it would be great to show off everything, Hillside and the library and that, but maybe that's part of next year. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. And
So
even next year, maybe it's the innovation park and, innovation area and Hillside and the library. They're all kind of geographically connected. Yeah.
Okay. So I've heard SoDo. Do we want to talk about Northwest Housing? Do you want to talk about the property tax? I mean, part of this was a housing discussion originally. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk about
if you-
that opportunity for
I'm
other
thinking
cities?
if you do that area, then you say there's a new high school going up here, and there's Northwest Housing Alternatives, and Axle Tree, and Coho, and,
So you would fold it
And the-
into the SoDo set?
yeah. And, that's just my thought.
That's kind of what
Right.
CD staff was talking about, including MHS and
Yeah.
Northwest Housing.
That we just sort of focus on that part of town, since so much of that is under construction. I mean, I
And the
think
park,
actually.
of course.
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
SoDo, the SoDo piece also has some really interesting interactions with like ODOT Rail, just because of the bridge and the work we had to go through for
Yeah.
that. The Kronberg path coming in. I mean, I think that you're actually tackling a number of different types of government projects in that space.
Could we get temporary permission to use the bridge to nowhere?
Yes.
It's
you just
been
can't go
open the
through
last
it.
couple of
Yeah,
days.
You just can't go through
Oh, has it? I didn't notice.
So having done innumerable tours on that, in that area for Portland First, or whatever they're called, and then for Tualatin, Tigard, you can easily burn an hour just
yeah.
in the South Downtown,
Yeah.
easily. It's hard to talk about all the things. I mean, it depends on what your subject, what you limit yourself to, but it's hard to talk about all the things. And then when you take 60 or 70 people across McLaughlin, invariably it's in 2 or 3 groups because people will not stick together, no matter how much you tell them.
Well, so maybe the challenge is that the South Downtown becomes walking through and pointing out some key stuff, but the real talk about the work happens at the Masonic Lodge.
Yeah.
No, that works.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was envisioning.
Yeah,
You just kind of see what it is, but now you hear more about it,
yeah.
more detail.
Scott has something to add.
I was just, if we're almost time for dinner, but I had a summary just to make sure I capture everything, and then maybe staff will take this back, work on it some more, and report back to council, make sure we're on the right path. Sounds like we're okay locking in Masonic Lodge for some part of this. So maybe we start earlier with a cocktail hour, and we'll have to reach out to the food cart pods, make sure we can get this all to jive. But that's the idea, start earlier, maybe 5, just a soft open at 5.
5:30, like,
5:30, yeah.
Park wherever and meet at
That's another thing.
cart pods.
We'll have to, in terms of what we tell, where they park, we'll have to tell them downtown. I mean, across from City Hall, but also downtown, knowing that they'll be going. So an early start, 5:30-ish, then by 6-ish, start the tours.
Could we offer, we don't have a line item on here, but how many people do we have? Could we potentially get some kind of something,
We'll talk to him.
park at Park Avenue Station or Johnson Creek Station and take Max to the food cart and can we maybe subsidize that?
I have no idea. I can look at it. We're
We're saving money, we're saving money by doing it at the Masonic Lodge. Maybe we pay for TriMet passes to encourage people to take the MAX from the park and ride stations.
One of the things, yeah, and we'll look into it. One of the things to also note is that some of the individuals who come to this are not super mobile.
Yeah,
So,
we do have to keep that.
I just want to make sure that the individuals, that there needs to be parking in both locations, just so people can get there.
Yeah.
And but the parking is better at both of those stations
Absolutely.
and more accessible, and the trains are more accessible even than a lot of our infrastructure in and
Absolutely.
around downtown, so.
But for people who have mobility problems to walk back from City Hall, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
are we going to start running shuttles or what?
Sure.
And we might be able to get the lot behind the school. We might be even to get the Horton lot, that's after hours for most of those businesses. I mean, yeah.
We'll have City Hall's lot, we'll have the Harrison lot still, it won't be under construction. So we'll have some locations for parking.
Main Street parking too.
Yeah.
Okay, so an earlier start, 5:30, 6-ish start, the walking tours, which will include SoDo primarily, but we'll cross over to the park and come back.
Are we going across to the park?
I think so.
Yeah. Do-do-do-do-do.
So one of the things that the staff did think about is the mayor's comment about the hour. It gets really hard to get people to all the things they're going to want to see. It may also be that we have a housing group, parks group, and a SoDo group, and just let them sort of self-select into who's going to go at 6 to each of those, so that we give people a more intimate experience around that topic, and then we go back and we talk about sort of the big picture of what's happening down on South Downtown.
I think I want to show off the park too, and I do want to, make a, sort of essentially be making an ask.
Right.
But I think to do that, and this is totally weather dependent, and I understand it, but I think that we need to have some visuals there at the park.
Right.
It can't just be, here's this big blank.
Right, no, we would
Yeah,
need to
have
have
the
the
schematic
boards
drawing.
and we would absolutely need to have
Yeah.
that, yeah. Yeah.
Or those
But
could
then
be
that's
set up in the Masonic
look
Lodge,
at.
too.
I understand that, but unless you're looking at it there,
Right.
I think a lot of people are going to be like, what am
Are
I
not
looking
gonna,
at?
they're not gonna,
And it just isn't going to, those two things aren't going to be connected, because they're going to see that before they get to the Masonic Lodge, and then it's just, I don't think it's going to have the same impact. For sure, we repeat it at the Masonic Lodge,
Yeah.
because not everybody will make the walk down there.
You might be better off handing them out.
Oh, handing out.
Yeah.
just a sheet.
Yeah.
If you just have something
that's a
down
good
there,
idea.
You got
Yeah.
to funnel
Just a
everybody
basic
past
map.
it, and they've got to look at it and be interested, and
Just
there's
trifle.
another half hour.
Right, that's a good point.
That's a really good, yeah, like just an 8.5 by 11.
So some sort of information to hand out, so they don't have to stand, or we don't have to staff people there necessarily under tents or anything with poster boards. It would just be, here's information about the future of the park, work on that. So we're hearing yes across to the park, at least in a select group across. And then by 6:45, be at Masonic Lodge. So that's,
Yeah, dinner at 7.
which
Finish at 8.
is more or less what has happened before.
That's mostly what they do, yeah.
And then dinner at 7, and then in the past, when we've started the panel, we start that at 7:15, but we could probably start it at 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 8, you have, like you talk, and we can hone it more, but the different projects, staff talking about giving visuals, the presentation between 7:30 and 8:30, and then,
I don't know if.
7:30 and 8, it's really
Half
usually
hour.
half hour, yeah.
Yeah,
Half an hour is probably more than most people
Yeah.
can.
yeah. I mean, we got to think.
If we're
of span
starting
of
that early,
attention.
people get antsy and they'll want
Evening
to
our
go.
panels always broke up at
Yeah,
8:30,
yeah.
and we were pushing the mayor to wrap up.
Yeah,
Different format completely, different
Yeah.
location completely, but
right.
anyway, 8-ish, 8:15, somewhere in there, we wrap up, and then, so that's what we'll take back, and we'll hone and process and get back to council in a bit.
Yeah, I think the only piece, with the only 30 minutes in the room, we're probably going to be doing a more high-level discussion about the general vicinity and a bunch of the policies. We won't be able to go into depth. But people will self-select into a tour.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we're going?
Yep,
Okay.
Sounds good.
that's a wrap.
Literally
we
at
done?
5:30.
5:30.
All right, the work session / regular session.